All right, it's happening. We're getting the lumber now. The lumber for all the stands. One thing you guys up down south can't even realize is how challenging it is to go and buy decking lumber in the middle of winter in Canada. It's all frozen together. You have to bash it apart. And we finally got all what we needed. So there's our lumber load. We got all our 4x4 posts. We got our 2x6s and our 2x4s, and they're all environmentally safe. It's a special type of pressure treated, so it'll last really long. I didn't get it for those purposes, but I got it because it's all nice and uniform in color. So let's get this stuff home. Let's get started.
Now, if you're as fascinated as I am by the incredible diversity of life that surrounds us in this wonderful and sometimes bizarre natural world, then you truly belong here with me. I make videos on all facets of nature, from aquariums and vivariums, reptiles, isopods, insects and arachnids, all sorts of DIY projects, and all sorts of bizarre plants. And one thing I try to do is I try to dig a little bit deeper into the science behind it all. So if these topics are of interest to you, please consider hitting that subscribe button, as well as ringing that little notification bell, and you'll always be kept up to date when I upload new content.
Now, buying lumber in the wintertime, especially lumber that's generally used outside, is a bit more of a challenge. Well, lumber's all unloaded. It's in the garage. Now it's gonna have to sit here for at least a day, probably more. The garage isn't heated, but the garage is really well insulated, so at least all this stuff will kind of defrost. As you guys can probably already tell, it's pretty noisy in here, but we've got to get the lumber defrosted. That's something most people have to consider and think about when they're going to build a new fish stand or something. But we got to get it defrosted because it's been stored outside. It's covered in ice and stuff. So my buddy down the road went and helped hook us up. That's what the noise is. Got a giant flame cannon. It works pretty good, pretty quick. See, there's a lot of water on the ground already. It's a 60,000 BTU heater. Uses propane. We're gonna make quick work of this. It's awesome. We're gonna be able to get all these stands hopefully cut today. But before we do that, we gotta actually start looking at some of the plans and figuring out a cut list. So you can see that the lumber's starting to get, it's not necessarily dry, but it's definitely taken off the bulk of the ice. There's still little remnants of ice left on it and stuff like that, but it's coming down pretty quick. Now the thing is, we got to start looking at this. I just did some quick little drawings of what I wanted to accomplish. There's 5 sections that start, and then I had to create a full list of what I needed for each stand and be able to get a totals of what we needed to be able to do. Okay, so each stand next, we got to go and we got to get all our cut lists done, so I can take all this lumber and figure out exactly what we need to do for cuts. How many, what sizes, everything's already here. Let's get a cut list made up so we can get started as soon as this stuff's ready to go. Now before we start, as I mentioned earlier, I had to go and make a cut list. Cut list is actually breaking down every 4x4, 2x6, and 2x4 that I'm going to need for each individual stand. I only have 4 out of the 5 listed here so far. Got our tape measure, got our square, got our pencil. Because we're going to be using a chop saw, it's a very, very dangerous thing. We want to be safe. We've also got some safety goggles as well that'll go over top of my glasses. This isn't super exciting. If you guys want to see how everything goes down, we'll do this as a time lapse. Let's get to it. Well, there you have it. That's day 1. We've got all 4 stands that we wanted to get taken care of today. The 5th one is a bit more complicated. We'll get into that one a little bit later. But we got stands 1 through 4 completely cut. We've got 3 of them here and 1's over there. They're all staged, ready to go.
And then tomorrow's job, we're going to clean them up a little bit, and we're going to haul them downstairs one at a time and start putting them together in order. All right, guys, here we are on day 2. Today, now we got to start getting some of the stands assembled, or at least get to the point where we can assemble them. Some of them are pretty big, so we're not going to build them up here, but we're going to get them all ready to go that we can haul them downstairs into the lair, and then we can put them together. Now, the first step is the lumber's all pretty much dry. I've left the furnace thing running most of the night and stuff, so it's all nice, and most of the lumber's pretty dry. It's messy, though, so we're going to go ahead and notch these out. Now, what I mean by that is these are the legs for stand number 2. I usually would start with stand number 1, but stand number 2 has to go into the room first because it's a big 6-foot stand. And that's the big pile of lumber for stand number 2. It has 2 shelves on it. So what the drawing is basically these are the 4 legs for stand number 2, and they require 2 notches on each one. So if each one of these legs is standing upright, this being the top, this being the bottom, I have to have a 5.5-inch notch here to support for the cross base. And then down here, somewhere around here at this level, I have to have a 3.5-inch one for the 2x4 for the lower shelf. So we're going to go ahead and get these notched out. Now, normally I would use this on my table saw, and I put in the data blade, and I just run it through and take the big chunk out. But for what I've got to do for the purposes I need, is I'm just going to use the jigsaw, mark it off, and they're quick and easy to do it. I've done it lots and lots of times. That works just fine for me. Alright, stand number 1 is built. Sorry, stand number 2. Clearly says on the ends they're bigs. But the other thing I'm going to be adding in here is I'm going to be putting in a block of a 4x4 here. I have it cut in the garage already. I just forgot to bring it in. I just got to clean that up and bring that in because this is a 6-foot span from this edge all the way to the outside edge. And it's to support that 160-gallon tank. We're going to be putting a nice sheet of plywood on top and then some styrofoam. It'll all be concealed down the road. You can see the joinery is very, very simple. It's very easy to make the notches. Yes, because it's a 4x4 post, it would have been a lot easier had I just set up the dado blade. Maybe I'll do that for the next round for the other stands, but no matter what, I've done this so many times I can make it work. Now, all the strength in this is way overbuilt. I'm just using screws for construction. I have in the past where I've run and put 2 big bolts through here, big lag bolts that'll come through on the back, but honestly, the structure on this thing, this is not going to move. This thing has no give either way. I went with the 4x4 posts, not only for structural integrity, which I really don't need for this case. Even the small one that's going to be on this wall here, that's going to have, just tarantulas and small 12-inch cubes. That's also going to be done with 4x4s, as I want consistency through the whole room, that it all look like it all belonged together. So let's get on to number 2. I've got my favorite helper here to help me put together the stands. You gonna help me put it? Gonna do it? All right, let's get to it. All right, well, I had my helper and we were able to get the other one done. So basically this is stand number 1. As soon as you walk inside the door, this will house the beast. And then the slightly smaller version of the beast. And then over here we have Paisley holding up the other one, and that's the one for the big 160, and a couple of terrariums below, and then some storage. And then tomorrow, we're going to bang this one off tomorrow. And then we're also going to get the one ready for this tank. Because what's going to happen first is we're going to have to move this tank into position here, get it all leveled, and then we're going to have to take all the fish and everything else out of that one and set it up in this tank. But before that can happen, I've got all my electrical mounted already, but I have to go and run the drains behind here for the automatic water changer system. But all in all, for day 2, we got 2 stands all put together, ready to go. Good job, Paisley. Do I get a high five? All right.